Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a very short video and it's going to be about how to watch my rod review videos. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I do rod reviews of St. Croix rods because those are the ones that I'm buying. I'm not sponsored by St. Croix, but I've decided to buy those. I've decided to buy into the Legend Tournament series, and I do reviews on that. And people tell me, hey Joe, you know what, I watch all your videos, but I don't watch your rod reviews. And I'm like, why is that? Well, I never actually ask him, but I'm speculating. One is probably, well, I don't use St. Croix. I use some other brand that I like and want to use. That's perfectly cool. I understand. And the second one is perhaps that the rods are not in the price range that they're used to dealing with. And I get that. I get both those. But here's what I want to tell you. When I talk about these particular rods, I do talk about the specs of the rod to some degree, but most of the time I'm talking about the rod, its power and action, and how I use the rods, what baits I use the rods for, and why that power and action is why I use that rod on particular techniques. That can translate to any rod manufacturer, any rod line in a manufacturer. So keep that in mind. Therefore, as you watch my videos, ignore the part where I talk about St. Croix, and ignore, you can skip over the part where I talk about the specific specs of this rod, but do pay attention to what I'm doing with the rod, why I'm doing it, and why I selected a particular rod with its particular power and action. And remember, I have two main reasons why the purpose of a fishing rod. One purpose is to cast the lure, right? Every rod has different power and actions so that you can actually cast lures. Like really light lures takes a certain type of rod action and power, and heavy baits take a certain rod power and action, right? Those combined work together. Secondarily, it's how you fight the fish. And frankly, most of the rods will handle a fish of all sizes, but I do believe that certain rods can handle larger fish better than other rods. So if you're after nothing but big fish, then heck, why not use a rod where you have the proper power and the action to make that happen? Lower down the tier is, can the rod's power and action help you manipulate the bait? This is the great example is a jerk bait, right? So jerk bait is the thing where you're jerking, pausing, holding still, doing all kinds of stuff. And certainly when you're applying action with that rod, you want a rod that helps you, not hinders you, okay? So that comes down the list a little bit below the top two things. And further down the list of important things is rod sensitivity. And to be honest with you, I don't think much of rod sensitivity. It's not a big factor in why I buy a rod. I will say this though, no matter what rod company you like, if you're into sensitivity and you need that sensitivity, perhaps for certain types of fishing, maybe with drop shot, maybe with jig fishing or something like that, then you should do nothing but buy the highest end rod that rod manufacturer offers in that particular rod line. And I'm talking about spend the Benjamins, spend the 5, 6, 7, 8 Benjamins it's going to take to get that high sensitivity. If it's that important to you, then you should do that, because generally the more expensive the rod, it's made with higher modulus graphite, and therefore it is indeed more sensitive. Okay, but I don't think that's always important. Certainly some techniques you don't need it at all. Anyway, keep in mind when you're watching my rod reviews, what baits am I saying I use it for? What techniques am I using? With that, I think you will learn a lot more about what a rod power and action should be used for particular lures, as opposed to exactly everything about the St. Croix Victory line or the St. Croix Legend Tournament. Ignore the models and brand, pay attention to the power and action. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And remember, we're Americans. We deserve to be free.